This is the WealthAbility for CPAs show. Better clients, better practice, better life. Here's Tom Wheelwright.
Welcome to the WealthAbility show for CPAs, where we're always discovering how to build better clients, a better practice, and a better life. Hi, this is Tom Wheelwright, your host, founder, and CEO of the WealthAbility Network. So here we are in pandemic tax season number 3, or as I like to call it, year 3 of pandemic tax season number 1. It's just never ended. And we have with us today really somebody I'm dying to hear from, Henry Grzes, who's from the AICPA. And we're going to talk about how to get through this busy season. I mean, and you know, what do we expect from this busy season? How do we manage this busy season? And so, Henry, it is absolutely delightful to have you with us. Thanks for joining us on the WealthAbility show.
Tom, thanks very much for inviting me on, and hopefully I can share some insights with you and your listeners.
Well, we would love that. So let's start with the kind of the I think the hardest part of this, which is how do we even start to prepare for a busy season when the IRS already is 10 million tax returns behind? They're already only answering 10% of our calls, let alone client calls, and they say that's going to get worse. They've told us we have to be patient, and they basically told us don't expect anything from us this year. So, what do you say, Henry? I mean, how do you even start to prepare for that?
Well, I guess we've now just set the bar really, really low. So. So as a result of that, even the modicums of success folks may have, they'll feel victorious. But it is, Tommy, you clearly laid out a lot of the challenges for practitioners. And this is an ongoing struggle that has been going on. It was a problem pre-pandemic, but obviously the pandemic exacerbated everything. We've all read about the decrease in service levels, and that is tied to funding, to staffing, but it's also issues that the IRS has had to deal with that not so much they weren't expecting, but it was dropped in their lap. Things like the having to get out the economic income payments, and then the advanced child care credit payments. And then last year, with the change in the law, having to reprogram everything to take into account that $10,000 exemption that for unemployment. So this just exacerbates the ongoing situation.
You know, it does seem like it's been a tale of two institutions. I think we all think that the IRS has done an admirable job when it comes to getting out those pandemic payments, and actually handling. We've had 5 different major tax law changes in the last couple of years, and I think they've done an admirable job doing that. I just think that they have clearly put all their resources there and none of their resources to service, and yet they continue to send out notices. They can, even when it's the notices are coming because they haven't done their job, they continue to send out notices. So let's just start with what should we anticipate for the next few months from a tax season standpoint? What are you expecting the IRS to do?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I think there has to be patience, and I know people's patience are wearing thin at this point in time, especially if you're dealing with taxpayers or clients that have gotten some of these notices. You, as their financial advisor, has responded timely, and the notices keep coming. And it is that issue. So, the AICPA is clearly advocating on behalf of practitioners to get the IRS to, change some of their ways. It won't be a total fix, but it will at least make the tax season easier for practitioners. Because tax season, as we all know, it's tough to begin. Even in the best of times, it's tough. And these are not the best of times by any means. So clearly you want to make sure that your clients are educated, that they're aware of the fact that we are, as a profession, are struggling because of the fact that you have all of these other factors. You've got the challenges with the IRS. You've got this changing legislation, or legislation that might be on the horizon. You know, back in the last quarter of 2021, there was a potential for another tax law with the, Build Back Better. If and when that comes about, it probably will, but nobody seems to know at this point in time. Obviously, Congress has a lot on its plate. They've got the continuing resolution that they have to deal with to avoid another government shutdown in the middle of February. And I know now front and center is the filibuster possible changes and voting rights bill. So, but I don't think that this, and they've also talked about some additional relief legislation above and beyond what might be in the Build Back Better bill. So, these are all things that you're trying to deal with a situation with the facts that you know them to be at this point in time, yet you have to try to anticipate what might be going down the road. So,
right. And not to mention that we have 22 states now that have pass-through entity taxes.
Right.
And we have to deal with all those states as well, right?
Right.
So that's and those jurisdictions. So we won't get to that part yet. But let's talk about busy season, because I know a lot of clients are used to getting their tax returns filed in busy season. You're talking about setting expectations, and I've been a big believer. Of course, the clients in my CPA firm tend to be more complex than the average CPA firm. That said, I've always told my clients that they're better off extending and just give yourself some relief. So even last year, when they last minute changed the due date to May, we assumed it was going to be April, and we actually prepared extensions for April 15th, even though we had a May 15th deadline, knowing that, it's just not going to get any easier. So what do you say to, what's your thought on actually encouraging clients to extend their tax returns?
Yeah, I think that you want the clients to be aware of the challenges that you're facing. And when I was in practice, now I've been on staff here for a little over 6 years, but worked in firms of various sizes. And I would always try to say to the client up front, look, I would much rather have you extend a return and let's take the time to do it and do it right, as opposed to you not getting all the information from the client, and then you find out after it's filed there's additional income or deductions that need to be claimed, and you got to file amended return. And so getting clients to understand that up front, even as organized, I'm sure many of your listeners use organizers and engagement letters, and be upfront with them as to, hey, look, this is going to be a really, really challenging season. And the sooner you can get the information in the door, the better off you're going to be and I'm going to be. Because as a practitioner, I want to take the time with the client to make sure that the return is right, and then the client understands the return, because it's ultimately their return. I've never had a problem with sitting down with a client and making sure they understand. Taxes are pretty complex, let's face it. And you want to make sure that the individuals know why they're paying the tax that they're paying. And when you're trying to force a lot of returns in through the April 15th filing period, there's only 24 hours in a day. Right. And, the idea is that you want to have those conversations. And I've always felt that it was beneficial for both the client and the CPA to be in an environment where they're not pressured to get stuff out the door. Clearly, you want to make sure that clients understand that, hey, if they get their stuff in, there's a reasonable expectation that they should be able to file on time and what have you. But there's always those outstanding K-1s or, some things that are hanging over their head that people say, well, you only need one more thing. Can't we just file it right before the deadline? But you want to be upfront. And I know many practitioners are in a position where they specifically state in the engagement letter, if you don't get your stuff here by X date, we're automatically going to go on an extension.
We do that. We have to have everything in a month ahead of time, else we're going to extend. And one of the things I'm hearing from you, Henry, is the importance of communicating with the clients. And you know what we always say is communicate early and often.
Right.
and so we actually start preparing those extensions in March. Because clients don't want to know that they want to get a call on April 14th and say, by the way, you owe $100,000 tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right. They want to know by April 1st. In my opinion, they want to know by April 1st. Well, let's talk about another part of communication, and that is fees, because we have major increase in salaries. I mean, so much pressure on the industry. We have fewer people in the industry. We don't have a lot of people coming out into the industry, and a lot of salary pressure, and a lot of other cost pressure, like the fees for the software going up, insurance going up. I mean, all of our costs are going up, and to some extent, even more so than your 7% inflation rate that the government gives us, right? So how do you prepare the clients? One of the big stresses, I think, for CPA firms is billing and fees and talking about that. How do you prepare the clients for that? And how do you make that less stressful?
Well, you want to be upfront with them. And like you said, that's a great way of sharing that information. It's like, look around, everybody's costs are going up, and we feel we're providing a valuable service to you. Now, everybody has a budget, and I've worked with plenty of clients, plenty of prospects, where you try to be realistic about the fee quote. I mean, I would always try to estimate a fee up front to the best of my ability, and then would also try to, when something changes out, whether the scope expands or there are things that you just didn't see because it's something new in this year's return, you look at the last 3 returns, you're bringing on a new client, that would be something that I'd always do, try to see whether there's a fluctuation in their income, or talk to folks up front and get them to understand that not only our costs are going up, but these returns become more complex every day. And, with these constantly changing laws and regulations, and people have to understand that they have to be willing to pay for that. Wow. And I've said to clients before, I've lost clients where I've had a situation where they just didn't want to pay the fee. And it's sort of like, okay, I understand that. That's a decision that you make. It's a business decision that you make. And, I wish you well. And you have to be willing to accept the fact that if you're going to charge what you feel is a fair fee, not everyone is going to want to pay for it. But, as you said, communicating that information up front is the best way to do it. You don't want to take somebody who's, I'm just throwing numbers out here, but they're paying $1,000, $1,500 for their personal return, and all of a sudden you hit them with a bill twice that size without any type of communication as to why there's an increase in the fee.
Well, we always tell our members of our network that the number one thing that clients don't want is a surprise. Right. And that comes to fees too. So, that's why I'm a huge proponent of giving them a price up front. I'm actually a huge fan of a monthly subscription price as opposed to a price for a project, because one of the things we want to do, I think one of the things that's been really clear is that our clients want a relationship with us. Right. They don't want this to be transactional. They want it to be a relationship. And typically, if it's relationship, you don't pay by transaction, you actually pay for the relationship. And so, it's like, do you want a doctor who's always on call? I actually was in a situation 2 years ago where literally, because I had that doctor on call, it literally saved my life, because the hospital was not going to admit me, and the doctor actually forced it, but only because I could reach my doctor on the cell phone. And if I'd not been able to do that, be here today. So, I think the clients look at us the same way. And particularly, we've been through the PPP loans. We're doing the employee retention credit is a lot of what we're doing right now. Right. Yep. We've got all of these things going on. Plus, like you say, the IRS keeps throwing new requirements at us, basis requirements for partnerships, new filing requirements, new forms. We have now the research and development tax credit is all changed because they didn't pass the law at the end of the year. So we have all those things going on, it seems to me like the better we can communicate with the client and let them know, and just be matter of fact, say, here's what our fees are. And you're right. There is somebody they will be cheaper than us. Right. And if that's what you're looking for, that's great. What we want to do is provide more services so that we can actually reduce your taxes to help you reduce taxes to offset any fees that we may charge.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, that's the approach to take. You as a client are making an investment in your financial advisor, and you want to make sure that you get the appropriate rate of return on that investment. And that's it's just like any other investment choice that you make.
It is. I think that we always have the choice of looking at our fees as an expense or an asset, right? And an expense, something you want to minimize, where an asset, as long as it's giving you return, you want more and more of, right?
Absolutely.
So the more we can deliver, and the better we can deliver what the client really wants, which from a tax situation is lower taxes, right? They want fewer surprises, lower taxes. I have a client that when on her message on her cell phone, her message says, give me let me know who you are. I'll call you back. Tell me what it's about, especially if it's good news. She's actually told me, she goes, Tom, I'd never had good news from a CPA until you and I started working together. And I'm going, that's the idea, right? It has to be good news. So that's a good question to follow up on. How do you create good news during a pandemic?
Well, to say that's a challenge. Yeah. It's good news is that, you got the return in, and the client has gotten the refund. When you see all those other, or read about all those other stories that, amended returns have been filed 9-10 months ago, employee retention credit. I don't know if your listeners have participated in the AICPA's town hall broadcast, but we sit in the background and answer practitioner questions, and we're always getting questions. Hey, I submitted these employee retention credit claims 9-10 months ago, and I haven't heard boo from the IRS, and that's really frustrating, because obviously these credits were generated so that you could get cash in the hands of taxpayers, and that sort of defeats the whole purpose of it. So
no, that's exactly right. But you mentioned a good point. I think you said something I think that's really critical, in that setting expectations. How would you set the expectations with the clients for this busy season?
Well, I would say that, look, it's going to be challenging. And quite frankly, if you thought the last couple of years were going to be challenging, based on what we know already, it's going to be worse. And, you've got some additional items. You've got the third stimulus payment to deal with. And now you've got the the advanced child care credit issue to deal with. And I personally found out today, I wasn't aware of this, that with the letters that are being sent out by the IRS on a joint filed return, each spouse is going to receive a letter that reflects half of the credit, assuming that they didn't opt out of that. So, you're going to want to gather as much information from the client as possible so that you can support it. And once again, try to just explain to them as best as practitioners can that this is going to be a challenging year, and you're going to do everything possible in your power to make sure that the returns are filed on time and the client gets the refund or pays the least amount of tax. But there are just going to be some things that are going to be out of your control. Well,
there's no question. I mean, refund, the idea of getting a refund on an amended return is like passe. Sorry, don't expect, I tell people, don't expect it for 2 years. Literally don't expect it for 2 years. You get a notice. Historically, we've called the practitioner's hotline. Now it's a matter, we have to send it back because it takes 3 hours to get through on the practitioner's hotline. The question is, do you want to pay $1,500 for me to sit on the phone for 3 hours, or do you want me to send a notice? Your call. But to me, it's still setting that expectation and giving the client a choice.
Correct.
So what would you prefer? How would you prefer to do this? And set those expectations up front. Any other advice that you can give CPAs for this busy season?
I would say, they communicate with your clients. Try to continue to interact with them. Give them some sort of update on returns. You know, sometimes practitioners are just so overwhelmed that, you know, the organizers come in, the client sent it in, but then they don't hear from the CPA for a month. And hey, it doesn't have to be, you know, hopefully you've trained your clients. I remember when I started in this profession, I was the first full-time hire by a sole practitioner. And he made it very clear to the client base that I was on board, but there were still people, when I would call them about their return, they would say, what happened to Bill? And but the idea is, you know, letting your staff interact with that client base, it relieves the burden of that direct communication with the partner. Yeah, make sure that the partner is educates their client that, hey, we've got a team working on your return. And just because John or Sue calls you up to ask you a question doesn't mean that I've stepped away from the engagement. It's just that we're trying to use as many people as efficiently as possible. So, you know, even a simple email saying to the client, hey, we've got your return, it's in the system, you know, we're going to try to work on it over the next couple of weeks and look for some follow-up communication with us. That's going to solve so many problems for clients.
You know, that's so important. We have a rule actually in our firm where we have to respond to every client communication within 1 business day. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't mean we have to, we know the answer within 1 business day. It just means we have to respond because the client wants to know, yes, you got my email, you got my phone message, you're looking at it. Here's what the timing, what I can expect from a timing standpoint. Again, they don't want surprises. And what they really want is that communication. So I think that's critical. And you mentioned something else that I love, because we've been doing this for many years, and that is involving staff, and not just professional staff, but administrative staff.
Absolutely.
I have my wife owns a CPA firm as well, and her accounting manager calls the clients on most things. And in fact, is the one who does most of the communication with the clients. And the clients have come to know that and rely on her. Yeah. And they love her. And so I don't think it has to be, like you say, it doesn't need to be the partner. It can be your tax professional staff. It can be administrative staff. There are other people that can help out. What the clients want is they want to know what to expect. And they do want some communication.
Right. Right. And the sooner you can get words out, like you said, no one likes the surprise on April 14th, whether, even though they know that it's going to be extended, the sooner you can get that information to them, the better off they're going to be. And you know, most practitioners have a client base. I think that the income is relatively steady from year to year. Obviously, there are life-changing events in certain circumstances, but geez, if you owed $10,000 last year with your return and we're going to extend it, it's probably pretty reasonable, unless circumstances have changed, that you're going to owe $10,000 this year. So, you know, make sure that they're reminded of that. So
that's great. So great things, Henry. From the AICPA, you know, communication early, often, be transparent, let them know what to do, you know, no surprises, and and set expectations. And I think that's awesome. I just want to thank you, Henry. Thank the AICPA. I know I was at the National Tax Conference in November, and you guys did a great job. It was very discouraging listening to the IRS, actually, because they seem to think we work for the IRS and not for our clients. But that said, I think there's so much we can do, and there's so much the AICPA does. And so thank you so much for that.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks for that endorsement. We value the relationship we have with our members. We're clearly looking to address their needs, their concerns. Like I said, we've got that complimentary webcast on the Town Hall series. It's usually 2 times a month now, and it's a great thing so that you get 1 hour of free CPE for all AICPA members. It's all cutting edge stuff. You're going to get sort of what's going on top of news type of thing. And unfortunately, there's still more questions than there are answers. But we're clearly trying to do everything that we can as a membership association to help our members.
Thank you very much, Henry Grzes, AICPA. Thanks, everybody. Just remember that, when we communicate better, set expectations, and just let our clients know what's going to happen, and don't worry about it. Okay, we'll take care of you. And when you do that, you're always going to have better clients and a better practice and a better life. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the WealthAbility for CPAs show. Better clients, better practice, better life. To learn more, go to WealthAbility.com.